Friends, rivals, places, threats, love. Each generation of Pokémon is a puzzle made up of these pieces, but there is something that lies behind each generation, a central theme that leaves us with a message and a new vision of the Pokémon world. I've always wanted to talk about this theme in depth, the message of each Pokémon generation, but I couldn't find the formula until I thought, would I be able to summarize this all-encompassing idea, the true essence of each generation, in just one word? The generation that started it all presented us with a strange, unknown world with everything yet to be discovered. But that doesn't mean that the novice and humble game freak from that time didn't have a clear idea of what they wanted to express and make people feel with their game. It's not a secret how a young Satoshi Tajiri was a bug catcher who spent his free time from school catching and collecting insects, a hobby that used to be very common in Japan back then. Though we don't know if he was also trying to train them, who knows. Discovering a new species, catching it, taking care of it, and learning from it was a feeling that no words could express. But the years went by and the green place where he grew up would gradually become a city, with those moments and memories becoming more and more distant. Pokémon would be born with the wish to emulate that emotion in today's children, mixing that old hobby with his new hobby, arcade machines and video games. The rest is history. But Tajiri's childhood would not only lead to the birth of the series, it would also influence every aspect of the games. Kanto itself depicts how he and his friends would take long bike rides from home, with a compact world and that feeling of seeing how far you can go on your own, where you feel the world expanding around you. All that inspired the Kanto region. All scientific and technological developments that amaze you in this new world, the people you meet along the way, the places you visit, the new creatures, your first defeats, and how you have to learn from them to move forward are aspects that today we all take for granted. But at the start, they all followed the same path. That idea that a young bug catcher wanted to recover. The first generation is discovery. That desire to discover a new world would be one of the distinctive features that would go with Pokémon since then, but in the second generation something is different, and you can feel it from the start. Because while Kanto from the very beginning overwhelm us with advances in technology from at least 100 years in the future, with macro corporations that move their bustling cities, and a dark plot in the shadows that tells us how the human being went too far, in Johto we find a world that, even happening 3 years later, feels like a trip back in time. Handmade Pokeballs crafted with apricorns in contrast with the new models of the Sylph Company. Moo Moo Milk Farms against the advanced potions. The lighthouse in Olivine City illuminated by a Pokemon against the big cities and their neon lights. The pharmacy in Chinwood City and its traditional medicines. The fundamental importance of tradition. From the Japanese aesthetics of the cities to the legend of the Two Towers and the legendaries, to even rumors about the Union Cave and the siren songs heard on Fridays at dusk. The Kanto that we can find there, despite being 3 years later, is also reminiscent of the past, with a much more peaceful and melancholic air than the one we found previously. The original music of Red and Blue, which these games revisit, slows down noticeably and makes use of much sweeter and softer harmonies, hints that time has passed, evoking that nostalgia in a soundtrack that whispers that all is well. Today we know that originally, Tajiri had in mind that these games would be the last of the series, as a sequel to settle pending matters with a golden and silver clasp. And that is the essence of the generation. In the same way that Gen 1 wanted to transmit the emotions that Tajiri felt and bring them to a world that looks to the future and advances frenetically, the second generation put a stop to that hustle and took us back to a time when things were simpler. Could that be the reason why the hidden mythical Pokemon of these games is a time traveler? The second generation, in its enthusiasm to realize that original vision of the series, is nostalgia. Gen 3 starts with a moving truck, and while it's not the most rural place in the world, as soon as we set foot in the region, we can sense the value that this game gives to nature. We just need to look at ourselves. The outfits of the protagonists are sporty and comfortable, ideal for exploring the vast nature that opens before us. Dense forests, Mysterious caverns, large caves, and volcanoes with a strange atmosphere due to the volcanic ash they produce, beautiful beaches, and huge oceans. The natural wealth of the region is evident in every corner. Even the cities are very diverse and take advantage of natural resources in incredible ways. The professor who welcomes us is an eminence of habitats and ecosystems, along with more scientific groups in the region that follow a similar line. What can we say about the vast ocean that embraces the region, unparalleled in the Pokémon world, with all its mysteries and secrets to be discovered? Stunning nature is the theme present in every corner of the region. But as for the message of the games, we can say that an even deeper theme lies behind all of this. When we finally access the immense sea and cross the frontier of the adventure, we realize how the region is somehow divided in two, one part dominated by the land and the other by the sea. We could even draw a dividing line that shows its perfect balance, and we only have access to that part after winning the Balance Badge, truly a statement. Hoenn's natural wealth and such fair structure express the idea of balance, just as its villains represent the danger of breaking it. Whether they are the nostalgic Team Aqua, who seek to return the world to its primal state, or the Magma Revolutionaries, who seek to artificially accelerate human development. Even though at heart they are both pacifist groups that dream of building an ideal world according to their philosophy, both commit actions that would end up being equally apocalyptic, reinforcing once again how valuable and important it is to maintain that balance. I think the fact that practically every aspect of these games contributes to that master idea, it's very underrated. We could really make a whole video of how every detail is incredibly fitting, or how everything is inspired by real events that happened in Japan during those years, which 100% inspired the message of these games. The third generation is harmony. After taking a gamble with Gen 3, which would end up being a new best-selling, Pokémon would consolidate itself as a phenomenon that was here to stay for a long time, and space. What better scenario to start than with the Nintendo DS? A revolutionary new technology that brought with it endless possibilities. But the main one, and the one that inspired Game Freak the most when it came to creating these titles, was the Wi-Fi network. For the first time, we were going to be able to connect, trade, and battle with people all over the world, which may seem at first glance to be a relatively minor aspect of the games, but let's not forget that it was that idea what inspired Pokémon in the first place, bringing back the feeling of exploring an unknown world and sharing it with others. It was a golden opportunity to bring back and boost that original essence. Around that idea is that Sinnoh was built with a clear philosophy, which Masuda would summarize in his blog as the world of tomorrow, the world of a distant future, an ideal world, an ultimate world. Because the barriers that separate us no longer exist and we are all connected, they choose the diamond as a symbol of love and the pearl as a symbol of happiness, both gems that reflect light. A light to which protagonists and other relevant characters allude with their names. A light that represents the spirit of humans and Pokémon that the antagonist considers something impure that must be extinguished forever. A light that represents the legendary Pokémon, which in these games took an unexpected turn from mysterious creatures hidden around the region to creator deities, who from chaotic darkness let there be light to form a world where life, emotions, and feelings could bloom. If it's not already clear, the fourth generation is light. Legend tells how an ancient dragon of unimaginable power, only on par with its kindness, trusted two brothers together with whom it built a world of peace and harmony for humans and Pokémon. But then it happened. The two brothers came into conflict and... Wait, not so fast. Let's start from the beginning. On a promotional tour for Diamond and Pearl, Junichi Masuda visited New York and was impressed by the diversity of the city, with people of all kinds and events and festivals for every community. In total contrast to Japan, there was a universal feeling, like a world without borders, which he thought was a wonderful setting for a game, and inspired him to create Unova, the first Western region in the Pokémon world. That diversity and depth are taken by the game to the ultimate results, being undoubtedly the most varied and unique generation in terms of geography, soundtrack, Pokédex, and so on. But it also goes hand in hand with the philosophy of the games, the existence of multiple points of view and ways of understanding the same subject. Basic pillars of what a trainer is, that until then had been sacred, are questioned over and over again. Is it okay to catch Pokémon and store them as if they were objects? Where does this compulsion to become stronger and stronger without a real reason behind it lead? Where are the people we leave behind when we go on adventures, following our hearts but not thinking about how they feel? All the relevant characters in the plot bring a new vision of the Pokémon world that truly makes the player wonder things, and this is the very driver of the plot. Many characters are at first narrow-minded with rigid ideas, leading to conflict, which, as the legend said, has been repeating in the region since time immemorial. But as the story progresses, especially in its climax, the two heroes who represent precisely that conflict at the highest level learn from each other to see the other side of things, opening the door to a better world. Black and White 2 surprised all of us by being sequels where there are still radical and narrow-minded people who lead to conflict. But the world has changed a lot in these 2 years. It breathes harmony, and that's the essence of these games. That although by our very nature we're fated to clash and argue again and again throughout history, as long as we make the effort to understand and learn from each other, a better future awaits us. The 5th generation is hope. As usual, it's enough to take a look at the legendaries to understand a good part of what these games wanted to bring to the table. An angel that fills all living beings with life and energy, and then turns into a withered tree and rests for centuries and centuries until it recovers. A demon that, when it feels the end of its life is near, steals and consumes the vital energy of everything around it, turning everything into a dead wasteland. Life and death represent the two lines of an axis, which go in apparently opposite directions but end up meeting at a point, and that point is everything. Pokémon X and Y is a story of how encounters define our existence, our group of friends, and all the situations we live together and make us who we are. Mega Evolution, as the ultimate manifestation of the bond between Pokémon and trainer, is also born from a random encounter, and the Millennial King and the beloved Pokémon he has been waiting for all that time, wandering the world until they meet again. Life and death as the ultimate manifestations of chance, improbable and chaotic, which ends up defining our existence. The entire 6th generation revolves around this idea of two opposing worlds intersecting, especially appropriate for games that first told us about the existence and importance of multiverses in the series, and above all being the games that made the leap to 3D, which also represented on the X and Y axis. The 6th generation is Encounter. The end of our journey is near, so let's go with Sun and Moon, where we are immersed in a very particular world with strong traditions very different from the conventions we were used to in the series. And we're not only talking about the island challenge. Alola itself has a very different structure from the rest of the regions. The Pokemon and ecosystems feel particularly unique. Even regional forms were introduced as totally different manifestations of species we knew very well before. Ultra Beasts, as life forms that have developed on unknown worlds and under such different conditions that make them completely alien to the logic of our world. And yet they can be companions and friends. Z moves as the manifestation of an energy that science is unable to explain, and yet the guardians of the islands have dominated since ancient times. A region full of light and warmth, open to everyone who welcomes it with a smile and an effusive Alola. And on the other side of the scale, the part of the marginalized population that decides not to live following those conventions and form themselves a big family. Alola, in the end, wanted to talk about life in all diversity and expressions, with all the strength that this variety can bring to make us better. A love letter to the Pokemon world that brings a smile to our faces and leads us to a bright future. Gen 7 is life. 8th generation, Sword and Shield wielded by the legendary warrior that these games present. And if anything defines a hero, it's to show his face in the important moments. That's why the plot of the game advances through how its characters are put to the test. The brother of the most powerful trainer in the world who must flee from his long shadow and find his voice in the world. A girl from the poorest town in the region who carries the responsibility of restoring its hope on her back. The chairman, with a level of power far beyond even what any antagonist has achieved, but which he wanted to accumulate from the beginning to have a chance to put an end to an inexorable crisis that everyone wants to look away from. Even the gym leaders, who in the face of the sporting tone that the Pokemon League takes, give their best not to disappoint those who trust them. Just like the star of the sport with his fans. And we can't forget the two legendaries, who don't hesitate for a second to come to the call of the Chosen Ones to face altogether a threat much stronger than them. The 8th generation is a puzzle with all its elements along the same lines. Heroes who, each in their own way, come face to face with their fate and far from being intimidated, give the best of themselves at the moment of truth. Discovery, nostalgia, harmony, light, hope, encounter, life, and determination. How far will this unique dictionary go? Which word do you think best describes Scarlet and Violet? By the way, while we wait for the DLCs, the picture we have of this generation is still incomplete. Thus, I prefer to wait before doing a thorough analysis. By now, keep an eye on the related video on screen. Be nice.